I was shocked to learn that there was actually very little I could learn about the history of apple butter. I found this really great food timeline online that listed the consumption of apples as early as 8000 BC. Cinnamon had been discovered by 700 BC. Apple cider was being consumed around the 11th century, but apple butter hadn't been created until like the mid-1760s. The Pennsylvania Dutch and Moravians, the settlers of German descent, are credited with introducing and perfecting apple butter. Well, since we have some fresh-pressed apple cider from yesterday and some leftover apples, I figured we'd give it a go. This is the last of the apples that we need. The recipe calls for 24 medium or 6 pounds. We're going to wash, peel, and chunk the apples. That's it for the apples. Let's go to the stove and add our apple cider. Here's 2 cups of sweet cider we pressed yesterday. We're going to add this to our apples and simmer until the apples are soft. The apples have been simmering for about 15 minutes. Looks like they're soft enough. Let's take them over to the counter. So the next step is to puree our apples. We're going to need 3 quarts of apple pulp. Now I've chosen to puree mine in my food processor. You can use either one of these mills if you like. Now if you use your food processor, just be careful not to liquefy your pulp. That should do it. Now I'm going to process the remainder of the batch. So we've got 1 quart of puree in our pot already. I'm going to measure out our last 2 quarts. Perfect. And back to the stove we go. Now would be a good time to mention patience. Do you have patience? Because you're going to need it to make apple butter. We're going to add 3 cups of sugar, 1.5 teaspoons of ground cinnamon, and 1/2 teaspoon of ground cloves. And then we're going to simmer for a long time. Simmer the apple butter until it's reduced by about half and becomes the color of a dark brown sugar, and it is going to take a couple of hours or more. Well, it's been a little over 3 hours, and I think we've got apple butter. So let's go ahead and get this in the jars. Did you know the brown color is actually due to the sugar in the apple caramelizing? Oh, by the way, before you start to fill your jars, start your water bath canner heating on the stove. And if you've watched our previous canning episodes, you know how important it is to wash and inspect your jars before you fill them. We've left a 1/4 inch headspace. Now let's get these jars into the canner. We'll process them for 10 minutes. It may have taken apples thousands of years to evolve into apple butter, and it may have taken all morning to simmer on the stove, but boy is it worth it.